Are big special interest campaign donors winning special treatment from Governor Gary Herbert?
As the political season heats up, KSL-5 News examined the governor's donations and public schedule. As John Daly tells us, those records reveal a pattern that Herbert's opponent plans to criticize in new ads. John.
Bruce and Edie, the record clearly shows big donors getting meetings with the governor and in some cases later enjoying favorable decisions from the state. The governor and his team strongly insist there's no connection. In February, several news outlets reported Governor Gary Herbert's campaign deposited a $10,000 check the same day the governor met with leaders of a coal mining company seeking a permit in southern Utah. State regulators apparently sped up the approval process shortly thereafter, but Herbert's office denied any link. As a result of that story, we compared the governor's public schedule with his campaign donations and found a similar pattern in other cases, some of which played out last fall as the governor was aggressively raising more than $1 million for his war chest. One case involves contractors on the I-15 Corps rebuild in Utah County, the state's biggest ever road project. 3 teams vied for the contract. One gave the governor's campaign no money, another $35,000, the other, Provo River Constructors, much more. Wadsworth Brothers Construction and partners Ames, Ralph Wadsworth, and Floor have contributed more than $80,000. Around the time most of those donations came in, Guy Wadsworth got 2 meetings with the governor, apparently something no other bidding team had. The governor says the I-15 project was not discussed.
Did they talk about the I-15 project? Did you discuss that with them?
Nope, they've never talked to me about any road project specifically. I have nothing to do with how people get bids. We have independent boards. It's a competitive environment.
A month later, the state awarded the $1.7 billion contract to Provo River. The governor says he had nothing to do with UDOT's decision. He was present at the construction kickoff in March, but told us he didn't know the team won the contract until we told him.
You know they won the bid for I-15 South, I-15 Core, correct?
Now that you told me that, I do.
You didn't know that before?
I have not. I don't know who's won the bids on virtually. We have 210 projects, and whether Wadsworth got it, nobody calls me and says, "Hey, guess what?" It's just something that's not even on my radar screen.
UDOT's chief, John Nord, says the Provo River team won the bid because they agreed to do more work in terms of miles, quality, width, lanes, and bridges in less time than the others. He says, quote, "I was never told by the governor who to select or by any member of his staff. It was entirely my decision." Another case involves a man who recently appeared in a Herbert ad, Fred Lampropoulos, CEO of Merit Medical, which gave the governor's campaign $50,000.
We wanted to make sure that he got off on the right foot, and it costs money to run these things.
Last fall, before that money was given, Lampropoulos, himself a candidate for governor in 2004, endorsed Herbert. Around that time, the two met twice. Herbert says they discussed policy. Lampropoulos says it was economic development and
merit, and what our goal was in terms of moving a business from Texas to Salt Lake City, which we've done.
A few weeks after the meetings, the Governor's Office of Economic Development awarded Merit a $4.6 million tax credit for a new expansion, which Merit says will cost $40 million and add 500 employees. Both men say there's no link between the meetings, the money, and the tax credit, which the governor says was decided by the board.
Absolutely not. Again, anybody can, I guess, try to make any kind of accusation on 2 + 2 = 5, but I meet with business people throughout the state.
We do, tens of thousands, if not of hundreds of thousands of dollars of contributions to numerous political campaigns, on both sides of the aisle, by the way.
That just smells funny.
Herbert's campaign opponent sees a pattern of contributions, access, and official decisions.
I think citizens should be concerned that big money has taken over politics, and that's what we need to change. That's why we need campaign finance limits. That's why we need to limit contractors with the state from giving large contributions to elected officials. Pure and simple.
The governor's team says they're essentially being criticized for raising money from big sources, something Caroon is doing too, with $50,000 from developer Kem Gardner and $10,000 apiece from at least 9 labor unions.
If he's getting big support from big labor, then that ought to be something that the electorate ought to factor in as they weigh and consider our candidacies. If I'm getting big support from the business community, that's something they ought to figure into.
Several calls and emails to road builder Guy Wadsworth were not returned today. Meantime, the Caroon campaign says it plans to start running ads on this issue next week. Bruce Andini, back to you.
John Daly. The state of Utah paid out a $13 million settlement to one of the unsuccessful bidders on the I-15 core project. KSL and the Deseret News have learned.
As John Daly reports, that news comes as the governor finds himself in the midst of an escalating controversy over big campaign contributions from the team that won the contract. John?
That's right, Deanie and Bruce. Last year, 3 teams vied for that $1.7 billion contract. Not long after the bid was awarded, one of the losing teams accused the state of giving the winning bidder special treatment. In a protest letter, losing bidder Flatiron Skanska Zachary said UDOT's I-15 core evaluation oversight team, quote, failed utterly to provide an independent observation of the evaluation and selection process. It accused UDOT of repeatedly violating both state and federal law, particularly regarding the scoring of proposals and a review committee changing ratings made by UDOT's own evaluation teams to favor the winning bidder, Provo River Constructors.
There was one contractor that protested. It's not unusual that that sort of thing occurs.
FSZ asked UDOT to reopen the bid. UDOT refused, but paid the losing team $13 million. UDOT's chief says the evaluation was fair and that Provo River won the bid because they offered to do more work in less time.
We kind of predicted that this might occur, and we were prepared for it, and we dealt with it.
The winning bid team, Provo River Constructors, gave the governor's campaign more than $82,000, and one bid team CEO had 2 meetings with the governor before the contract was awarded. But the governor says he had nothing to do with the I-15 bid, and that the first he'd heard about the settlement was when asked at this news conference.
I didn't even know who won the I-15 contract. It's out of my purview. It's not something I'm even following. So you can say 2 and 2 equals 5, but it isn't so.
The governor and an array of top GOP leaders accused his Democratic opponent of dirty politics by raising questions about campaign money and access in a 50-plus page memo Friday, though they didn't dispute the facts in the memo.
There's just no justification for this kind of mudslinging.
Caroon makes no apologies, saying he backs contribution limits and that the questions are legitimate.
If the state's settling for $13 million with another contractor, I would be concerned as a citizen. I am concerned as a citizen.
Now this evening, the CEO of one of the winning contractors, Wadsworth Brother Construction, which is part of Provo River Constructors, issued a statement saying he does not apologize for supporting the governor's candidacy and criticizing Caroon for a, quote, ill-spirited political attack. The whole statement is on KSL.com. Deanie Bruce, back to you.
Thanks, John.
Why did UDOT pay $13 million to settle a complaint from a losing bidder for the state's biggest ever road project? And why did lawmakers and the governor not know about it until the story became news yesterday? Today, legislative leaders told our John Daly they are not pleased. John.
Bruce, that's exactly right. UDOT's chief admits he didn't tell the governor or lawmakers about that $13 million payment, something lawmakers say took them by surprise. Last January, UDOT quietly negotiated a $13 million settlement to a losing bidder, Flatiron, of the I-15 core project over complaints the winning bidder got special treatment. News of it didn't break until yesterday, catching the governor, who says he knew nothing of it, by surprise. Today, UDOT's chief called the process, quote, very clean, saying the winning bidder offered to do more work in less time and that the process was not influenced by large campaign contributions given to the governor's campaign by that winning bidder.
Was the governor's office or the legislature alerted about the claim, the $13 million?
No.
Why? He describes the challenges of bringing those decision makers into the loop on a variety of complex and detailed discussions.
I think if I had to draw in everybody into every single decision, they'd have to work with me every day.
At the Capitol today, lawmakers expressed their displeasure at not having been notified by UDOT.
We hate surprises in the legislature. If that's one thing we do, we hate surprises. And we made sure they knew that we should be notified of these kind of issues.
One construction law attorney not working on this case, but who has dealt with UDOT regarding disputes with contractors, called the payment extraordinary.
It's an indication that there was some claim by Flatiron that had some validity. that there was some real issue with the bidding process. That is a little unusual. I would have to say that my experience with UDOT, they don't pay money unless they feel like they have to.
One lawmaker tells me that $13 million is causing some heartburn, saying that it would pay for 162 reading specialists in the schools. Bruce?
Thank you, John Daly.
You're watching the #1 KSL 5 News at 10.
We feel that it's time for the governor to come forward and say, you know, why he did this, what's going on.
Contributions absolutely do not equal access.
The governor raises hundreds of thousands of dollars at his annual fundraising gala just hours after demonstrators go to the governor's mansion to protest what they call the state's pay-to-play system. Governor Gary Herbert joined a crowd of more than 1,000 people tonight for his big annual fundraising event.
As John Daly tells us, the gala was preceded by something it hasn't seen in the past, a protest linked to campaign fundraising.
Well, Lori and Keith, that's right. For years, Utah governors have held annual fundraising events that have mostly been uneventful. Well, not so this year. The Grand America is the setting for a black tie affair for Utah's political and business elite, including companies and lobbyists who donate anywhere from a few thousand up to $25,000. Last year's event raised $1 million. This year will be less.
Approximately right now, it's about $700,000. There's approximately nearly 1,400 people who attended tonight.
Hours earlier, a group called the Coalition of Utah Progressives protested at the governor's mansion and called for the release of documents regarding meetings with a campaign donor who later won a lucrative state contract. They specifically had questions about the $1.7 billion I-15 core bid going to a consortium that contributed over $80,000 to the governor's campaign, and about UDOT's $13 million payout to a contractor who lost that bid.
I think there needs to be an investigation. Number two, our legislature will understand where our priorities lie, which is not this kind of shenanigans.
The governor's spokesperson says last week the governor's office and UDOT released a slew of documents related to that issue.
It shouldn't go without notice that they staged a protest for something that's already occurred.
There's no link, she says, between donations to the governor's campaign, access, and any official decisions.
Governor Herbert is known for his access. Anyone who has taken the time to actually request a meeting with the governor will tell you that they get a meeting with the governor, regardless if they've paid money or not. It's impossible for any governor to be aware of every single contract, every bid, every meeting that's happening throughout the state. In this administration, in the Herbert administration, contributions absolutely do not equal access.
Now, the two major party candidates will have a chance to exchange their views coming up this week. The first debate between Gary Herbert and Peter Caroon happens Thursday at the University of Utah. Lori and Keith, back to you.
All right, John Daly, thank you for that report.
Utah Governor Gary Herbert has said a huge campaign donation did not help a construction company land the giant I-15 reconstruction project.
But a series of emails obtained by KSL and the Deseret News showed the governor's campaign took steps to make sure the governor knew the contractor in question was an important contributor.
And the emails show the governor's staff made sure the campaign fundraisers were among the first to know that that contract was awarded to the generous contributor.
John Daly has the details on these communications, which we obtained through government records. John?
Deanie and Keith, the governor vehemently disagrees the emails show anything other than routine and polite contact with a campaign contributor, and he says the release of the emails themselves show his administration is being fully open and transparent. Last fall, contractor Guy Wadsworth had 2 meetings with the governor at the Capitol. Around the same time, he gave the Herbert campaign $50,000, and soon after, his team won the I-15 core rebuild project. A series of emails released by the governor's office provide new behind-the-scene details. September 14th, 2009, Herbert's first meeting with Wadsworth, who is apparently upset his firm lost another contract on a St. George project. UDOT Chief John Nord briefs the governor in an email and says Guy will tell the governor that the process wasn't fair. My team said Guy simply blew the proposal and was less aggressive than the contractor selected.
It's not at all uncommon to have cabinet members see a meeting on the governor's calendar, have had some involvement with the subject of the meeting, and send an email that says, just so you're aware, this may or may not come up.
There is no record of what was discussed in the meeting, but 3 weeks later, Wadsworth becomes one of Herbert's top campaign donors, giving $50,000. 1 month later, November 10th, Mike Deaver, an event planner and Herbert campaign fundraiser who had arranged the earlier Wadsworth-Herbert meeting, emails Ginger Fairbanks, the governor's communications coordinator. The topic? A second Herbert-Wadsworth meeting about to take place in Herbert's Capitol office. He writes, it will be about transportation construction and issues within the state. And the governor should remember Guy was one of the $50,000 donors to the gala and is a first-time political donor.
It's not sinister. It's just a matter of if somebody's working with the campaign and somebody's coming to see me and they're introducing me for whatever reason. But we have a lot of contacts with people that have nothing to do with campaigning, just concerned citizens.
In a phone interview, when asked if there was any link between the campaign money and the I-15 bid, Deaver says, I can assure you there wasn't, and there never would be any promises discussed in conjunction with donations. It's ludicrous to think any of us would ever delve into that. A month after the meeting, December 9th, Wadsworth's team, Provo River Constructors, wins the I-15 core rebuild, a decision UDOT's chief says had nothing to do with the team's campaign contributions. He says PRC simply had the best bid.
It didn't influence our decision at all.
The day after Provo River is chosen, UDOT issues a press release announcing the selection at 1:42 p.m. Just 1 minute later, Jason Perry, the governor's chief of staff, forwards the news attaching the press release to Herbert event planner Mike Deaver, typing FYI.
My understanding is Mike had asked Jason to let him know when the contract was awarded. Jason forwarded a press release that also went out widely to you and your station and everybody else.
Keep in mind, this is all coming because we're open and transparent. You know, it's not like we're hiding anything. If I was wanting to do something sinister, you know, this wouldn't be on any kind of a record that anybody could find.
We've made numerous attempts to speak with I-15 contractor Guy Wadsworth. The company representative tells us he's out of town and unavailable for comment. In Salt Lake City, I'm John Daly, KSL 5 News.
It is starting to get to a boil right now about UDOT in particular.
A contractor in the middle of the growing I-15 bid controversy, a controversy that KSL uncovered, makes a surprising admission.
The governor calls for a full audit of the state's transportation agency. His campaign opponent says it's the governor who needs investigating. Governor Gary Herbert's asking Utah State Auditor Austin Johnson to audit the Utah Department of Transportation.
As John Daly tells us tonight, the move came just hours after key I-15 road contractor Guy Wadsworth acknowledged an improper relationship with a UDOT employee. John.
Keith and Deanie, it has been a wild day on this story, culminating with competing calls for investigations. At 2 p.m. today, the man at the center of a growing controversy involving campaign contributions and the disputed awarding of the I-15 core contract to a team which includes his company released a statement. Guy Wadsworth of Wadsworth Brothers Construction acknowledged a personal relationship with a female UDOT employee, saying it did not show professional judgment. Despite that, he says, I can say emphatically that this relationship had absolutely no bearing on any bid decisions at any time, and that the employee was not involved in the bid process. The statement did not name the employee. Earlier today, the Utah Department of Transportation confirmed a female employee was demoted for having an improper relationship with a contractor. But an agency spokesman says the relationship had no influence on the bid or a $13 million settlement to a losing bidder.
This person at no point was involved in the I-15 core project.
2 hours after the Wadsworth statement, the governor's office released 2 letters, one to UDOT Director John Nord, another to the state auditor. Governor Gary Herbert is calling for a full and thorough audit of UDOT, including a review of UDOT's processes for awarding contracts, technology usage, and human resource management practices. UDOT says it welcomes the audit and will provide auditors with the information they seek. Late today, his Democratic opponent called the move a campaign diversion and accused the governor of making UDOT a scapegoat. He says the Attorney General should investigate the governor.
I think it's pretty clear now that the governor's office has been used for campaign activities. That's not lawful under the Utah state law.
Herbert's spokesman responded by emailing Caroon's comments are not worthy of a response.
It is a wake-up call.
The director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics says the twists and turns of the story are putting the governor and his leadership under the microscope.
When a string starts getting pulled on this type of a political sweater, it's always nerve-wracking on where it stops.
A spokesman for the Attorney General's office responded to Karoun's call for a probe, saying that it's not up to them, they can't do it. He says that the Lieutenant Governor's office, it's them that is in charge of investigating campaign complaints. Meantime, this topic is sure to come up soon because there are a series of debates between Gary Herbert and Peter Karoun, starting with one tomorrow. Keith and Dini, back to you.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
At least one key GOP lawmaker is already looking to prevent Utah's transportation agency from secretly cutting any more huge settlement deals like the $13 million paid to a losing bidder of the massive I-15 core road contract.
As John Daly tells us, the aim is to make sure top state officials sign off on future large settlements.
Lori and Keith, that Senator John Valentine says he's still working out the specifics of his bill. Meantime, we checked with dozens of state highway departments around the country and could find no other settlements of this magnitude regarding bidding disputes in the last 5 years. A multi-million-dollar settlement quietly paid to a losing road bidder without prior approval from the highest levels of state government. Senator John Valentine says that shouldn't happen again.
I think it's a matter of trust in our government, that we want to make certain that our government's doing things openly, transparently.
He plans to bring legislation next session that would set a dollar threshold for UDOT to notify the governor and legislature of any settlement.
My investigation has convinced me that nothing was done wrong in this case, but it just has the appearance of something wrong.
But UDOT's chief insists the settlement was the best deal for taxpayers. The I-15 core project is fixed price. Bidders told UDOT what they'd do for $1.7 billion rather than the traditional low bidder contracting method, which he says is ultimately more expensive.
We were trying to accomplish in an innovative fashion the best value for the citizens of our state. So it's not surprising to me that you've gone around the country and not found anything like this, because frankly there is nothing like this. This is a very unique project.
But we found a project just like the I-15 core, Colorado's T-Rex. Also cost $1.7 billion and also was a design-build project. But there was no bid protest and no $13 million settlement to a dissatisfied bidder.
We've had our share of protests on bids, but I'm not aware of any situation or any case where we've actually settled financially with a contractor in this instance.
In fact, we contacted highway departments in every state and heard back from more than 30 of them, including most in the West, and we could find very few that paid out large settlements regarding disputes over road bids. Half of the states report no recent settlements where the state paid out money, in orange. Of those reporting payouts, just 4 top $1 million, none exceed $5 million. The highest we could find was Pennsylvania with $4.7 million. UDOT paid both losing bidders $1.5 million as compensation for preparing a bid and got to keep and use their designs. It paid an additional $11.5 million, $13 million total to losing contractor Flatiron, they say, to resolve a potentially lengthy court fight.
It was a business decision to clear the air and enable us to move forward.
But longtime construction lawyer Joseph Rust believes the payout was made for fear of losing in court.
The fact that they settled it quickly, they settled it for a large amount, suggests that there may have been some issues there that were pretty significant.
Many states, those in orange, require unhappy bidders pursue a clear-cut process or even file a lawsuit before a settlement is awarded. UDOT has no such requirement. Unlike Utah, Colorado requires unresolved claims to go to mediation or arbitration. Any legal settlement must be voted on in public by its Transportation Commission. Like in many states, Colorado's transportation agency is not required to inform the legislature, attorney general, or governor, but
We try to be very, very open with the governor's office on everything, and especially if something gets to a large financial settlement or something that's out of the norm from our way of normal doing business.
The governor has already issued an executive order requiring UDOT to notify state leaders of any settlement over $100,000. Meantime, the state auditor is conducting an audit of UDOT. He says that it should be completed by the end of this month. In Salt Lake City, I'm John Daly, KSL 5 News.